In the heart of downtown Princeton, a town known for its prestigious university and picturesque streets, an unspeakable crime shattered the peace. On the night of February 22, 2025, a horrifying murder unfolded inside the Michelle Muse apartments. A 911 call reported a gruesome scene. A fire had broken out, and inside the apartment, 26-year-old Joseph Hertgen lay lifeless, brutally slain. The alleged killer? His own 31-year-old brother, Matthew Hertgen, a former soccer player with a promising career that had once made his family proud. At first, the community struggled to comprehend how a once close pair of brothers could end in such a violent tragedy. But as investigators dug deeper, they unraveled a disturbing story of deep-seated jealousy, resentment, and a slow descent into madness. This is the chilling tale of the Hertgen brothers, a bond broken by blood. Joseph and Matthew Hertgen were born into a well-to-do family in Princeton, New Jersey. Their parents, Richard and Elaine Hertgen, were both accomplished professionals. Richard was a successful financial consultant, and Elaine was a respected professor at Princeton University. From an early age, both boys were encouraged to pursue excellence. Matthew, the elder brother, was the family's golden child, excelling academically and athletically. His love for soccer started young, and by the time he was in high school, he had earned a reputation as one of New Jersey's top players. He was disciplined, driven, and fiercely competitive. His parents showered him with praise, believing he was destined for greatness. He had a natural talent for leadership and was often the captain of his teams, a role that he took immense pride in. Joseph, 5 years younger, idolized his brother. He followed in Matthew's footsteps, taking up soccer and striving to match his brother's accomplishments. The boys' father, Richard, often pitted them against each other, fostering an environment of intense competition rather than camaraderie. This rivalry, though seemingly harmless in childhood, would later manifest into something far darker. Despite the competitive household, Joseph was known for his warm and approachable personality. Unlike Matthew, who was intense and brooding, Joseph was charismatic and easygoing, making friends effortlessly. His coaches often praised his sportsmanship and teamwork, traits that set him apart from his more aggressive older brother. As Matthew moved on to Wesleyan University on a soccer scholarship, Joseph pushed himself even harder, eventually securing a spot on the University of Michigan's soccer team. Both brothers had promising futures, but while Joseph was thriving, Matthew's career had started to crumble. Matthew's time at Wesleyan was not as glorious as expected. A series of injuries plagued his career, forcing him to spend more time recovering than playing. His frustration grew as he watched younger players surpass him. The pressure from his parents, especially his father, who had always held him to a high standard, became unbearable. The once proud golden child began to feel like a disappointment. Meanwhile, Joseph was making headlines. He was excelling in his college career, earning accolades and media attention for his impressive performances on the field. He had a natural ability to read the game, and his future in the sport looked incredibly bright. He was not just a talented athlete, but also a team player who had the respect of both his peers and coaches. As Joseph's success grew, Matthew's resentment deepened. He struggled to accept that his younger brother was now the star athlete of the family, the one carrying on the legacy he had failed to uphold. The brotherly rivalry that had once pushed them to be better athletes was now festering into a dangerous resentment. After college, Matthew's career did not take off as expected. Injuries continued to haunt him, and despite a few stints with semi-professional teams, his dreams of playing in the Major League Soccer, MLS, slowly slipped away. Frustration set in, and with it came a growing bitterness towards his younger brother. Meanwhile, Joseph was thriving. He was well-liked, charismatic, and had recently landed a job as a sports analyst. Unlike Matthew, whose career had stalled, Joseph was financially independent, successful, and still deeply passionate about soccer. Matthew, on the other hand, was spiraling downward. He moved back to Princeton, unemployed and directionless. He spent most of his days drinking, browsing conspiracy forums online, and writing disturbing poetry about violence, revenge, and resentment. Poetry that would later be used as evidence against him. Despite these warning signs, the family failed to recognize just how deep Matthew's resentment had become. Joseph, always the optimist, tried to support his brother, offering him financial help and even suggesting they move in together to help Matthew get back on his feet. Little did he know that he was inviting his worst enemy into his home. It was a cold and quiet evening on February 22, 2025. Joseph had just returned home from a dinner with friends, tired but in good spirits. He had no idea that his brother had spent the entire day drinking, seething in silence, replaying every perceived failure in his mind. As soon as Joseph walked through the door, Matthew confronted him. The argument started small, another complaint about money, about how Joseph had it easy while Matthew had struggled. But this time, Joseph was exhausted. Instead of pacifying his older brother as he had done many times before, he snapped back. "You need to move on, Matt. Stop blaming me for your problems." That one sentence was the final trigger. Matthew lunged at Joseph, shoving him against the living room table. Glass shattered as a lamp crashed to the floor. Joseph pushed back, trying to de-escalate the fight, but Matthew was in a blind rage. He grabbed a nearby golf club, one of Joseph's prized possessions from his college days, and swung it with full force. The club connected with Joseph's shoulder, sending him staggering backward. Joseph tried to defend himself, grappling with Matthew, but the older brother was fueled by years of pent-up anger. The fight moved through the apartment, knocking over furniture, shattering dishes, until they reached the kitchen. In a desperate attempt to stop the attack, Joseph reached for a kitchen knife, but Matthew wrestled it from his grip. And then, in a moment of pure, unfiltered rage, he stabbed his younger brother. Once, twice, over and over. The wounds were deep, the attack frenzied. Blood soaked the kitchen floor as Joseph gasped for air, struggling against the inevitable. But Matthew didn't stop. Even after Joseph collapsed, he kept stabbing, as if trying to erase every perceived injustice with each plunge of the blade. Finally, silence. Matthew stood over his brother's lifeless body, panting, his hands shaking. The reality of what he had done set in. He had killed Joseph. But instead of calling the police, instead of showing any remorse, he did something even more horrifying. He dragged Joseph's body into the living room, set the apartment on fire, and sat there, watching the flames rise. The fire quickly spread, smoke filling the air. And then, in one final disturbing act, Matthew took the family's pet cat and threw it into the flames.
Joseph Hertgen beat his younger brother with a golf club and stabbed him to death. He's also alleged to have gouged out his brother's eyes and to have killed the family cat.
At 11:42 p.m., neighbors noticed smoke billowing from the apartment and called 911. Firefighters arrived within minutes, breaking down the door to find the horrific scene inside. Joseph's body lay motionless, surrounded by blood and ash. The once pristine apartment was a charred disaster, evidence of a desperate attempt to destroy the truth. But Matthew was still there, sitting in the kitchen, covered in blood, his face blank, staring into nothingness. When officers handcuffed him, he didn't resist. He didn't speak. He simply smiled and whispered, "It had to be done." The discovery of Joseph's body sent shockwaves through the community. Friends, neighbors, and even former teammates gathered outside the apartment complex, whispering in disbelief. How could this have happened? What could have led Matthew to commit such a heinous act? Law enforcement wasted no time securing the crime scene. The fire had caused significant damage, but forensic experts meticulously combed through the wreckage, determined to uncover the truth. As investigators began piecing together the crime, chilling details emerged. Security footage from earlier that evening showed Matthew purchasing alcohol and a set of knives, his expression vacant and cold. A notebook found in his bedroom contained violent poetry and disturbing drawings, detailing thoughts of taking back what is his and ending the cycle of betrayal. Some passages even reference Joseph by name, painting a disturbing picture of his growing obsession. Joseph's phone records revealed he had sent texts to a friend earlier that night saying, "Matthew's acting weird. I think he's drunk again." This indicated Joseph was aware of his brother's deteriorating mental state, but had no idea of the danger he was in. Matthew's online activity painted an even darker picture. His search history included phrases such as "fastest ways to kill" and "how to dispose of a body." He had also visited forums discussing infamous fratricides, further cementing his premeditation. Forensic reports would later reveal an even more gruesome detail. Some of Joseph's body parts appeared to be missing. Investigators initially suspected they had been destroyed in the fire, but as autopsy results came in, a disturbing truth emerged. Bite marks were found on some of the remains, An analysis of Matthew's stomach contents revealed traces of human tissue, including fragments of Joseph's eye. The implication was chilling. Matthew had not only killed his brother but had also consumed parts of his body. Whether this act was driven by sheer madness, ritualistic intent, or an attempt to assert dominance over his long-perceived rival, remained a terrifying mystery. Despite overwhelming evidence, Matthew refused to speak to detectives. He sat in the interrogation room staring at the floor, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. When pressed for details, he muttered a single chilling sentence: "I had no choice." It was always meant to end this way. Detectives knew they had their suspect, but the question remained: what had truly pushed him over the edge? The news of Matthew's arrest spread quickly. Friends from their childhood, former teammates, even old coaches were stunned. The media swarmed the case, dubbing it the Hertgen family tragedy. Some speculated Matthew had suffered from untreated mental illness, while others believed jealousy had festered inside him for too long. Joseph's funeral was held just days after the murder, with hundreds attending to pay their respects. His parents were inconsolable. His mother, Elaine, had to be held up by family members, unable to stand under the weight of her grief. His father, Richard, a man once proud of both his sons, looked hollow, his face aged by sorrow. Meanwhile, Matthew sat in a cold jail cell, awaiting trial. No tears, no remorse, just silence. Investigators knew the next step would be crucial, building a case strong enough to ensure Matthew never walked free again. But the horrors of that night, the blood spilled in a fit of uncontrollable rage, would forever haunt everyone who had known the Hertgen brothers.